The boat's engine sputtered to a halt, and the island loomed before us like a dark silhouette, its jagged cliffs rising sharply from the churning sea. The sky overhead was overcast, casting everything in a dull, gray hue. My friends and I had come here seeking adventure, lured by stories of an abandoned settlement and a forgotten history. We didn't know it yet, but we were about to uncover something far darker than any of us had imagined. The island was silent when we stepped onto the shore, an eerie, unnatural stillness hanging in the air. The remnants of old stone buildings stood in scattered ruin, overgrown with thick vines and moss. Yet it wasn't the decaying structures that made my skin crawl. It was the sense that we weren't alone. "We should stick together," Jake, the most cautious of the group, said, glancing nervously at the trees that lined the edge of the island. "Something feels off about this place." Despite his warning, we pushed forward, laughing nervously as we explored the old settlement. The crumbling buildings, once homes and shops, now stood as hollow shells of their former selves. We found old, rusted tools, shattered windows, and faded photographs that seemed to have been untouched by time. But it wasn't until we ventured deeper into the island that we encountered something we couldn't explain. It began with whispers, soft at first, like the wind through the trees. But as we moved further inland, the whispers grew louder, more distinct. They were in a language none of us recognized, a hiss and a murmur that sent shivers down my spine. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, her face pale. "It's like someone speaking." The others fell silent, straining to hear. The whispers were there, just beyond the trees, too far to make out, yet close enough to feel their presence. "That's not normal," Jake said, his voice tight with unease. "We should leave." But as we turned to head back toward the boat, we realized the path we had come from was no longer visible. The trees had grown thicker, the shadows darker, as if the island itself was shifting, closing in around us. The whispers intensified, now sounding like urgent pleading. I could almost make out a word, "help," but the rest was unintelligible. We ran. Through the dense forest, our footsteps echoed in the silence, but no matter how fast we ran, the island seemed to stretch endlessly. The trees twisted in unnatural shapes, the ground beneath our feet soft and yielding, as if the earth itself was trying to swallow us whole. The whispers followed, growing louder with every step. Then Sarah screamed. I turned to find her standing motionless, her eyes wide with terror. In front of her stood a figure, pale, gaunt, with skin stretched too tightly over his bones. It had no eyes, just empty sockets staring into nothingness. It opened its mouth, but instead of words, a chorus of whispers poured from it, overlapping, as if hundreds of voices were crying out all at once. "Get away from her!" Jake shouted, pulling Sarah back, but the figure didn't move. It just stood there, waiting. And then the ground beneath our feet trembled. Suddenly, the forest exploded into movement. Shadows darted between the trees, their forms indistinct but growing closer. A chorus of voices, all speaking in that same foreign tongue, filled the air. I realized with a sickening lurch that they were no longer whispers. They were screams. We weren't meant to leave. We ran faster, but the island seemed to fight against us. The air grew thick, making it hard to breathe. The shadows surrounded us, clawing at our skin, pulling at our legs. One by one, my friends were yanked away into the darkness. Sarah, then Jake, then Mark, each dragged in the shadows, their screams swallowed by the island. I was the last to go, stumbling toward the shoreline, my body exhausted, my mind frantic with terror. But just as I reached the water, I turned to look back one last time. The figure was there, standing at the edge of the forest, its empty eyes fixed on me. The whispers faded, but in their place was a single, clear message.